One of the climactic moments of Andor Season 2 came in the ninth episode, when, following the Ghorman Massacre and the resulting Imperial propaganda being spread, Mon Mothma takes a stand in the Imperial Senate, calling out the Empire, the other senators, and Emperor Palpatine by name. It's a powerful moment with dire consequences, as Mothma is forced to flee Coruscant with the aid of Cassian Andor before the ISB can arrest her. Branded an enemy of the Empire, Mothma makes her way to Yavin to join the rest of the fledgling Rebel Alliance as they begin their organized fight against the Empire. Even before this took place, many fans knew that Mothma's Senate speech was likely to appear in the show, as it was shown in part during the animated series Star Wars Rebels, in which the Ghost Crew and Gold Squadron are tasked with retrieving Mothma and bringing her to the base on Yavin. But one of the biggest questions that fans had following the introduction of Perrin and Leida in Season 1 was what was going to happen to Mothma's family following her official defection to the Rebel cause. Would the Empire crack down on them, arrest them, torture them? Unfortunately, the second season never showed us the fallout of Mothma's speech on her family, besides one short clip of Perrin with another woman in the finale. But early on, this was a plot point that was going to be touched on. Speaking with Backstory Magazine, Dan Gilroy, the brother of director Tony Gilroy and one of the writers for Andor Season 2, spoke about an initial idea that he had written. In the scene, Mon Mothma would go back to Chandrila after fleeing the Senate, with the intent of explaining to her daughter Leida why she did what she did in speaking out against Palpatine and the Empire. It would have taken place in the same house where the wedding was, except now it is starkly empty compared to the last time we were there. Mon would go upstairs looking for her daughter and find Perrin there, where the married couple would have a heavy conversation about how Perrin would go on raising their daughter alone, and what the cost of Mon's actions were going to be. There would be a few story beats, and ultimately then Mon and Cassian would make their way to the ghost ship as seen in Rebels, but this was all cut due to keeping the runtime reasonable, and it also wouldn't have fit within the story at this point. Mothma's family and that dynamic was a key focus throughout both seasons of Andor, her strained relationship with a young, rebellious daughter, and a husband that doesn't necessarily support her political inclinations, so I think it would have been very nice to see it all tied up in a bow with this scene, because otherwise, the last time we had the entire family together was the initial arc centered around the wedding. Following that, we got very little with Perrin and Leida, which I don't mind, because they were never meant to be the focus of the series, and I honestly never cared much for either of them, but I do think this would have been an extremely effective way of showing the cost of Mothma's rebellious actions. We had the tense getaway scene from the Senate building, and the few lives that were taken there to help her escape, but this was all very much still focused on her own well-being. I think it would have been very impactful to show how this speech and Mothma's fugitive status affected those close to her, who weren't necessarily a part of the rebel movement with her, who didn't deserve whatever second-hand consequences were coming their way. And showing that through her husband and daughter and the life they would have been forced to live now would have been the prime avenue for that. While this was part of a magnificent run of episodes to close out Season 2, it did lack a lot of the consequence aspect. Although it isn't something massively important because we know he ends up on Yavin a year later with a rebellion anyways, Bail Organa being the one to give Mothma the floor to make the speech, you'd think there'd be some fallout to that too, but it's never touched on. The speech was amazing, but a scene like that mentioned by Gilroy would have at least shown one aspect of that fallout. There are of course the other factors of how it fits into the story, and given how intense the second half of this episode was, maybe it wouldn't have fit in nicely enough to make it worthwhile, but I still think that some short scene beyond Perrin's little shot in the finale would have been a nice touch to add to Mothma's story and what she lost by committing to the rebellion. What did you think of Andor Season 2? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like the video and subscribe for more Star Wars videos, and remember to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you. Always.